collectively as an expression of their good faith intention to work with each other in the coming year to try to find a common ground with each other to better serve the public. And I think it's a wonderful tradition, maybe today now more than ever. So with that having been said, I would ask the entire board to come forward for this swearing-in ceremony and line up this way. However you want to do it. This is really just a ceremony and a photo op. So if you've been sworn before, that's fine. Remember, this is for your constituents, and the camera's back there. I think you know what I mean by that. All right, would you all please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge my duties
and that I will faithfully discharge my duties
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. 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 Say congratulations. Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you all. Get out of your way. Let me get to work. Have a happy New Year.
Thank you.
Oh, that's what we're bringing.
That's
I'm sorry about the stretching this across.
Ever a problem.
I think you should get establishing the salaries of Emergency Services Coordinator, Director of Real Property Tax Service 2, Personnel Officer, County Superintendent of Highways, Commissioner of Social Services Group 1, Director of Public Health, Commissioner of Elections Republican for the year 2020. Notice is further given that the Board of Representatives will conduct a public hearing on the proposed local law in the Representatives' Chambers of the County Office Building in the Village of Cooperstown, New York, on Thursday, January 2nd, 2020, at 9:40 a.m., at which time all persons interested will be heard. The location of the public hearing is accessible to persons with mobility impairment. Copies of the local law are available for viewing at the Clerk of the Board's office, County Office Building, Cooperstown, New York, during regular business hours, dated December 19, 2019. Carol D. McGovern, Clerk of the Board of Representatives, Otsego County, New York. Would anyone like to speak on the proposed local law? If so, please state your name and address when called upon.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on that. I'm glad that you're all here and you're all reinstated again. I'm just curious as to why the meeting is slated for 9:40 and it's now 10:03. So we're finally just getting around to this? You're late for your deadline. If that was somebody's house, it would be taken away. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? I declare the public hearing on the proposed local law closed. Public hearing number 2. I would like to call this public hearing to order. Notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that there has been duly introduced before the Board of Representatives of the County of Otsego, New York, a local law entitled the Local Law Amending Local Law 1 of 2014, establishing, a solid waste user fee. Notice is further given that the Board of Representatives will conduct a public hearing on the proposed local law in the Representatives' Chambers at the County Office Building in the Village of Cooperstown, New York, on Thursday, January 2nd, 2020, at 9:45 a.m., at which time all persons interested will be heard. The location of the public hearing is accessible to persons with mobility impairment. Copies of the local law are available for viewing at the Clerk of the Board's office, County Office Building, Cooperstown, New York, during regular business hours. Dated December 19, 2019, Carol D. McGovern, Clerk of the Board of Representatives, Otsego County, New York. Once again, would anybody like to speak on this proposed local law? If so, please state your name and address when called upon.
Yes, my name is Maria Agello, and I really would think it would be helpful if when we're having a local law discussed, that we would have copies of it before the meeting so we can intelligently make an opinion known. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Karen Sullivan. For Maria's benefit, the changes to the local law user fee are an efficiency mode for the county. We have an appeals board that meets yearly to appeal any decisions that were made by the user fee. Over the 15 years I've been here, we've never had an appeal. So to make it more efficient and not have to find 3 members to serve on this committee, we decided to assign the Solid Waste and Environmental Concerns Committee as the appeals board.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? I declare the public hearing on the proposed local law closed. I would like to call this meeting to order. Roll call the members. The roll call will be qualified district. When I call your district, please state your name and address. District 1.
Edwin J. Frazier Jr., 16 Prospect Street, Unionville, New York.
District 2.
Michelle Farwell, 643 County Highway 8, Morris, New York.
District 3.
Rick Brockway, 3184 State Highway 23, West Oneonta, New York.
District 4.
Andrew Stammel, 42 Schoolhouse Lane, Oneonta, New York, 13820.
District 5.
Margaret Kennedy, 157 Pleasant Valley Road, Mount Vision, New York.
District 6. District 7.
David Bliss, 2209 County Highway 33, Cooper County, Illinois.
District 8.
Andrew Marietta, 6400 State Highway 28, Fly Creek.
District 9.
Keith O. McCarty, 5503 US Highway 20, East Springfield, New York, 13333.
District 10.
Daniel G. Wilbur, 760 Gulf Road, Burlington Flats, New York, 13315.
District 11.
Clark Oliver, 6 City View Drive, Oneonta.
District 12.
Adrian Martini, 41 Cedar Street, Oneonta.
District 13.
Danny R. Lappin, 3 College Terrace, Oneonta, New York, 13820.
District 14.
Joe Basile, 19 Central Ave, Oneonta.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business today is to elect a temporary chair. Do I have a nomination?
Nominate Kennedy.
Second.
All in favor of Representative Kennedy as temporary chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I declare Representative Kennedy as temporary chair.
My sole duty is to receive a nomination for chair of the board. Representative Wilbur?
I nominate Representative Davis.
Second.
All those in favor, do we do a roll call vote? Or do we do a roll call vote? We'll do a roll call vote.
Frazier?
Aye.
Farwell?
Aye.
Brockway?
Aye.
Stammel?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Oberecker? Bliss?
Aye.
Marietta?
Yes.
McCarty?
Aye.
Wilbur?
Aye.
Oliver?
Aye.
Martini? Lappin?
Aye.
Basile?
Aye.
The motion is successful. Representative Bliss is now chair of the list. I wonder why people in high school read the pledge every day. To see why he didn't. What do I say?
all for your vote of confidence. We apologize today for we have technical difficulties, so the voting is not showing up on the screen. So, next in line is the nominations for vice chair. Any nominations? Representative.
I nominate Citizen of the Year, May Kennedy.
Second? Rick? Guess we need a roll call vote then.
Is there discussion?
Excuse me?
Is there discussion?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, discussion. I apologize. Discussion.
I think Representative Kennedy would do a great job. And she has my respect and esteem. I just wonder, 2 years ago, we had a 7-7 split on the board in terms of representation, and, or 6, I should say 6-7-1. And we, for vice chair, Representative Kutnick was nominated, and he got a unanimous support of the board, and I felt that that was a very positive show of bipartisanship. And I'm just a little bit concerned that we might be taking a step backward as a county board.
Any other comments?
I agree with Michelle's perspective. I think having the bipartisan approach, and I know I've talked with a number of people about this, that it's I think contributed to how we worked well together, and I think Representative Kennedy will do a tremendous job as vice chair. I have no hesitations about her in that role, but from the perspective of just continue the bipartisan approach, I think we lose some of that, the value that we've had the last 2 years in kind of having that structure.
Anyone else?
I would agree that under Chairman Bliss's leadership, we've had really an increase in collegiality between members and bipartisanship. I think that those are promising developments, and I'd like to see that continue as well. I think Representative Kennedy would obviously do a great job, but I think in all honesty, it's not the most important position, but I think it is a nice gesture to have that bipartisan leadership. So if we can find a way to do that, I would approve of that as well.
I agree with the sentiments of my colleagues, and since there hasn't been any partisanship since last cycle, I think it would be fair to continue a show of bipartisanship and have a Democratic vice chair. And again, I think Representative Kennedy would do a great job, but I would like to see that continued show of bipartisanship on the board.
Anybody else?
While I agree with all of my Democratic colleagues, I also think it is nice to have some diversity in terms of who is the vice chair. And I think Meg brings that in terms of geography and gender.
I could be wrong, but I believe Representative Kennedy would be the first woman vice chair. And I would also like to point out that she is not a Republican.
It's true. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we will roll call vote.
Frazier?
Aye.
Farwell?
Aye.
Brockway?
Aye.
Stammel?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Overecker? Bliss?
Aye.
Marietta?
No.
McCarty?
Aye.
Wilbur?
Aye.
Oliver?
No.
Martini? Lappin?
No.
Basile? No.
Deep down, I support you.
So, this is resolution 1,000.
You know where I stand on this.
4,269 ayes, 1,425 noes, 534 absent. Representative Kennedy is approved as vice chair. I'd like to comment, I agree that we have had some great work together lately as nonpartisan, and I will endeavor to do my best to keep that. As Dan pointed out, Representative Kennedy is a conservative, so technically it is bipartisan. She's not representative of either Republicans or Democrats, and she has proven her worth beyond any reasonable doubt in the last few years. And I think, again, being first female vice chair in the county district, and I know from past experience that Meg will also be endeavored to be as bipartisan as possible. So, having said that, we will move on with the regular agenda. Privilege of the floor is next. Anybody can speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. We will start as we ended. My name is Maria Jello. I am an employee, and I had, there's the shot clock. I'm sorry, I have to pay attention. I would like to tell you that I received a letter regarding the questions I asked about the transferring of properties from INREM, and then when the property is returned, you have a resolution to return it, but not to take it. It says in general. And then I might require the advice of an attorney. I don't need the advice of an attorney. We have one, the county attorney. Should be able to answer this question quite simply. Now, if you want specifics, I could give you a specific. The 55 acres that was taken in REM in 2016, no resolution, returned by resolution. That's specific enough? Also, why is there no transparency? This board just voted right down party lines this morning. We have had bipartisan work. It's been wonderful. We can all get along. Now, my question to you is this also. I didn't put it in writing, but we have the second floor. That room is still closed. We did have some issues with asbestos. Supposedly it's cleared up, but I don't have that document. I mean, I did get a picture on my cell phone, but I can't print it. So we need, as employees here, to know that we're safe up there. Now, the room is still closed because there's a leak in the ceiling. It's coming through the tiles where the asbestos was. That room has been closed for weeks. Thousands of dollars to fix the roof, and it's still leaking, and we have no proof that it's still safe up there. So these are issues that we contend with as employees. And now you're going to go forward with a county administrator. My issue is still the same. I want my home back. I offered to pay. You gave me no resolution that it was going to be taken. You just did it because our county attorney said you could. But just weeks prior, you needed a resolution to return. You needed a resolution to take. It would appear to me that you just do it for the money. And that's a disgrace. A disgrace. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
And I'm Russell Aarons. I live at 180 County Highway 26 in your district over there. I took in Mrs. Agello when she became homeless because the county decided to take her home. You see, they treated her differently than every other taxpayer. There were taxpayers that were allowed to keep their property that very year. And then since that time, you've changed your process. The law never changed. You've just changed the process. So that you're accommodating people, so you're not throwing them out of the house, so that we don't have 50 people behind us. Bob Force wanted to be here today, took 111 acres of his land, and then you sold it for $45,000. That man has over $60,000 in litigation against this county. This county seems hell-bent to steal and destroy from the people that come here. That come here as tourists, that come here to relocate, that come here in their older age to try to make a life of this county. Now, anybody that knows real estate and that's in the real estate business knows how many sales come from downstate and how many really disappointed people there will be if they end up in the situation that she was. Oh, thanks for the clock. I hadn't seen it. Delaware County. This is for the press. See, other counties, when deeds are transferred, they list them in the newspaper, and they list it legibly. That's not what's happening here. When you see our tax rolls, they're all chopped up in little pieces. Delaware County writes it right across the line, and they do it in alphabetical order. Now, with the last minute and a half, I want to draw your attention to Bill Cherry, who just retired over in Schoharie County. Wonderful article on here, the Mountain Eagle newspaper down in the Catskills. I always pick it up when I'm traveling through that area. He uncovered thefts of money in the previous administration, as we have too in this county. We had an employee that embezzled $25,000, and the outcome of that was secrecy. We never knew if he did any time or any of this stuff, but Bill Cherry brought that to the attention that 3 estates had been entrusted to the former treasurer, and that treasurer ended up in jail. Now, government didn't steal that money, the former treasurer did. He was arrested, convicted, and imprisoned for his crime. That doesn't seem to happen here in Otsego County. And I'll tell you what else. He saved a woman's home in Seward, and I know some people that live out that way. She owed $600 in her taxes. He bent the rules. He took payments from her, kept her in that house. He's very proud about that. And Mr. Cherry could emphasize with struggling taxpayers because he grew up poor in a trailer and watched his mom struggle to survive while working to rebuild the county after Irene's devastation. He too lost his home like many in the Schoharie Valley. What a man and what a treasurer. So I would submit to you this year, our new treasurer, well, he's not new now, Mr. Ruffles, who's serving our country, I believe in Africa, that's the man. He's found a way to keep people in their homes. He's taking payments, he's taking credit cards. There's been so many changes since Maria lost her home that it's no doubt, it's clear that she was treated differently than other taxpayers. So, Mrs. Kikoma, don't worry about the time. Time will move on, and so will others. The person that perpetrated this change sat in that chair up there, no longer here, as all of you will be gone too. The same as Betty Ann Swerd, who stood up against the rest of the people here, the rest of the representatives. Good day to you. Oh, by the way, applicant for county manager. Right here, 20 years of experience. Any of you have that?
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Is this the only time to speak, like, publicly? Okay. So I would like to bring up the point of the rise of the county...
So, I'm sorry, just name and address.
Oh, sorry. Jennifer Rosella, 131 Burke Hill Road, Milford, New York, 13807. I am a part owner of Hardwick Highlands Campground. The occupancy tax wants to raise it to 6%. We've been over this before, we fought it before. It's okay that it goes to tourists coming into this area, but it limits one thing. So they stay here, they pay more tax at the place where I give them to stay. They will then not go to Barnyard Swing, Fly Creek Cider Mill, Omegang, places that the county gets sales tax from. State sales tax is divided, if I'm correct, into state sales tax and county sales. So you're getting county tax from the state sales, then you're also getting them with the bed tax when they stay in this county. It's at 4%. Is that 4% used in Otsego County? If it is, by all means, great, but our roads are crap, we got other things going on. If you drive through the county, people live like trash, like third world countries, okay? So if you raise it to 6%, you say, okay, it's not due to the people that are in the county, it's people coming in, but that's gonna limit the other money that they spend in the county.
at the other places where they're gonna go, what brings them to this area. But a lot of your people that come and visit this area go to the Cooperstown Dreams Park, okay? They go there. If they have to spend more at my place on tax, then they're gonna go to my place and the Dreams Park. They're not gonna go out and visit the other many places in this area that we bring tourists to in this area. Something to think about. I've been told that it's going to be taken off the vote and everything like that, but please, please, please think about this. I am not the only one representing places that give the occupancy tax. But I do know the number that we send to this county, and it's a high number on my end. There's a lot of places that do accommodations and provide people with places to stay. You don't want them to turn to other towns that don't charge the tax. You want them to stay here. You also want them to spend the money in the tax. People travel all over. They stay at my place, they go all these places. I tell them all these places that the Chamber of Commerce promotes, not only right here, but Oneonta and other places. Hey, go to these restaurants, go to these different places, go have fun, spend your money in our county. Let's get it in the county, not in the occupancy tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Want to speak?
Joshua Wanger, 311 Bush Road, Cooperstown, New York. I'm going to second that. The more we raise taxes on the tourists, the less they're likely to spend elsewhere in the town. I think if we want to try and generate more revenue in the town from the tourists, the best option is to increase the number of businesses here. Make it easier for especially local small businesses to move in and generate more sales tax revenue. And you're going to in turn increase more tourist traction as well. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I know his sister. Yeah.
Okay, hearing none. Approving the minutes of December 4th and December 16th board meetings, which are available online.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Approved. Presentation of petitions. Nothing? Okay. Special presentation, Taylor Bros from U.S. Census. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Taylor Bros. I'm a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. And I see some familiar faces in the room here. I do live in Richfield Springs, and I did serve the village of Milford with Brian Picorni for a number of years as an elected official. So again, it's a real honor to be here speaking with you. I'd like to thank Shane Digan for the opportunity to get in here and speak with you all. Happy New Year. We just started a new year, believe it or not. It's another year ending in 0, so that's why I'm here. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So again, I'm Taylor Bros. I work for the U.S. Census Bureau. I'm a partnership specialist. So my responsibility is to educate the 4 counties in central New York about the upcoming census so that everybody has the most accurate, up-to-date information, and your communities that you're responsible for can get an accurate count. I try to cater these presentations to the room here. It's a pretty high-level room here, so if you have any questions about why the census is important, please feel free to ask. But I'll try to skip all that in the interest of time. Thank you. So again, the Census Bureau, we are the largest statistical agency in the United States. We are the leading source of quality data about the people living in this country, its economy, people, places, and we conduct more than 130 surveys throughout the course of time. So we don't just go into hibernation after the decennial census. We do conduct several other surveys, like the American Community Housing Survey, Current Population Survey, and some of these other surveys up here in the years ending in 2 and 7. Our primary purpose is to count everyone once and only once and in the right place. As you can imagine, that's a pretty daunting task. A little fun historical fact for you. The decennial census, the country will conduct an accurate count, is actually written in the Constitution. In 1790, Thomas Jefferson was the first director of the U.S. Census, and he hired roughly 635 U.S. Marshals on horseback to count about 3.8 million people in the 13 states at the time. Just an unbelievably daunting task and job. Can you guys imagine that? We are estimating roughly 330 million people living in the country now in about 140 million different households. So this is the largest nationwide effort that we conduct every 10 years, probably aside from waging war, right? So why is it important? Well, it determines the number of seats that the state has in the U.S. House of Representatives, right? It defines congressional and state legislative districts, school districts, and voting precincts. It determines the annual allocation of $675 billion of federal funding. And here's some of the programs here that utilize census data to use those formulas to allocate the funding. And it also provides insight to governments, businesses, and community planning to small business owners to see if they want to start a business, right? Everybody live in that area? Well, we'll go create a business. Obviously, when we ask anybody for their personal information regarding the census, there's going to be some concern. We are trying to reiterate that we will never ask you for a social security number, your bank statements, or donation. We're going to ask you 10 questions on the short form this year, and I would wager that you probably give more information to the pizza delivery guy. The Census Bureau collects information, we produce statistics, and this is all aggregated data, okay? So no specific personal information is ever shared with any other governmental agency. It's all aggregated data about the people living in this country and the economy. As a federal employee, we do take an oath to the grave that we will never share any personal information if we come across that. Personally, I'm not going to be knocking on doors come April, but the census takers or enumerators will. They are under the same oath, and they will face up to 5 years in jail or a fine up to $250,000. Obviously, cybersecurity is going to be a huge area of interest and importance for us this year. This will be the first decennial that we are encouraging people to respond online first. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about that. We can predict based on 2010 and other formulas that we have that a high percentage of people in these census tracts are not going to quote-unquote self-report. So what does that mean? We have to send out more enumerators and census takers on foot, which essentially makes the experience less private, and it can also sway some of the responses. Again, this is all public information. So what I did was I just sort of pulled up Hartwick here, just to kind of reiterate that this is in fact a census tract right over the hill here that is going to have a low self-response score. Okay, up over 20% of the people living inside the census tract are not going to self-report. We understand that there's a myriad of barriers and reasons as to why people in these communities don't self-report. We know poverty plays a big role. Okay, we know it's a very challenging political climate, and so we realize that there's going to be some issues here where people are going to get this piece of paper in the mail and they're going to say, I'm not going to do it. So what does that mean for your guys' communities? I heard a lot of weighted voting, okay, that's going on, right, in relation to the population. It's really important that you guys get out and you guys start spreading this message. I see Mr. Salka in the back here. I saw Mr. Miller the other day. Okay. We realize that as the largest statistical agency in the United States, we produce a lot of data, and it can be kind of challenging to make sense of. If you feel a need or you think it would be necessary for someone from the Census Bureau to come out and work with you, we provide this free of charge. It's our data dissemination program. We can have a specialist come out to your organization and work with you to help you crunch some of this data. A lot of organizations that I've worked with over the past several months, like to put the people who are in charge of writing grants and things like that, they definitely take advantage of this free service that we provide. Some video. Okay, so we're obviously super hip. I actually sent my brother, he lives in China, but I sent him in his Census Bureau Instagram post, and it had like 55 likes. He's like, shouldn't you have 330 million? It's pretty funny. But look, we're trying, okay? So we're trying to be up to date with all the new social media. So friend us, like us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out here. This is my contact information at the top. And I can open up the floor to any questions that you might have. Yes?
How does it work with the college kids if you're not starting this till May? Most of them leave in May, and are they going to be counted twice when they go back home where they are and then counted here? How is that?
We hope not. So again, our goal is to count everyone once and only once in the right place. However, it is where the individual is sleeping 51% of the time. So an excellent example, I was asked a question about a foreign exchange student. A mother has a foreign exchange student who lives in Canada. That student's not going to be taking part of the census this year. So it's really under the assumption that these programs that the universities provide are sort of operating each year, providing services to those individuals to create an accurate count. Yes?
That leads me to another question. Say there's a foreign exchange student here, would they be counted here?
Yep.
Even though they're not a citizen?
Correct.
or visitor?
Most likely that foreign exchange student is living in a dormitory.
Okay.
And we conduct what's called group quarter enumeration administratively with the colleges and universities.
Okay.
We do the same thing with senior living arrangements, inpatient psychiatric wards, organizations that provide disability services. Yes?
When are the results available?
We will pass off the results to the president December 31st, 2020. And the aggregated data will get published via the website into the earlier months of 2021. Yes?
So I have a question about the 2 and 7 off-year surveys. From a community planning perspective, is there a way that we can continue outreach, to make sure that we get an accurate count of number of businesses and, and then type of business and consumer spending patterns? I know those are like voluntary survey data, but are incredibly important for our planning purposes locally.
So your question is, can we continue to do that?
Yeah, can you continue same level of outreach, because I think that is a kind of understated thinking. It's the most important is to count everybody, but obviously estimating the number of businesses and what our economic trends are locally at that level, that is really important. Those occur in all years. So.
I mean, we encourage participation. The American Community Housing Survey is quite a lengthy process for an individual to complete, but it's also incredibly important. I'll also just add that over in Schoharie County the other day, there was a lot of concern regarding census tracts not encompassing specifically villages and hamlets. If anybody has any further questions on that, I can certainly send you links on the census.gov website in relation to how we geocache and how we try to capture geographic regions to encompass an accurate depiction of the people living in that area. So our census tracts try to encompass 2,000 to 5,000 people. Obviously in a place like Otsego County, it's a very large geographic area. And we try to use census tracts so that they don't target or single out one specific demographic of people. So if you look at the census tract up over Richfield Springs, where I'm from, it's enormous. Why do you guys think it's so big? Who's living up there?
Farmers.
A lot of Amish people, okay? So we try to encompass everybody living in that area so that we can produce demographic data and statistics that are unique to that region. I'm going to pull up the next slide here real quick, and I'll just kind of whiz through. Let's see. So this is oh, thank you. This next PDF is just a quick snapshot of the census tracts in Otsego County. If you would like this information, please reach out and I can send it to you via PDF over email. But these are all the census tracts within Otsego County. And you can see some of the harder to count areas are sort of highlighted in red. That's a couple of the census tracts down in Oneonta. Opportunities for Otsego is going to be working with some of the hospitals down there to try to make like census bibs for newborn babies. We missed about 1 million children under the age of 5 in the 2010 decennial census. So we know that's a hard to count group. Can you go to the next slide there? So here's Hardwick here. See, in 2010, the household return rate was only 81%. Children under the age of 5, 5.7. You've got a large 60-plus community there. And you've got about a quarter of the households in that region that are renter occupied, okay? So that's a really challenging hurdle for us to try to count. Those people are very transient. They move within 12 months. They don't know where to complete the census. They're very hard to track down, okay? And we work primarily with the U.S. Postal Service to make sure that the information is disseminated, okay? You want to go to the next one? Cooperstown's pretty good. They always kind of take part in this. Next one. Keep going. That's up by me. Keep going. I was just out here talking to Ed Lentz the other day. Next one. See if we can get down to Oneonta. Keep going. All right, there we go. So you can see here some of the census tracts, primarily in those student housing units, are very, very challenging to count. So opportunities for Otsego and I, Shane as well is also on that committee. We've been trying to work with Mayor Herzig and get some of the landlords in that provide housing for some of these students to make sure that they know what's coming, so their communities can get counted. So Again, if you'd like this snapshot of every census tract in the county, just reach out to me, and I'd be happy to send that forward. Any other questions? I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you today, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you.
PowerPoint and not Connie Carter, but whatever, my county email to you. Or I can email you. Would you email me? I will.
Let's do reports of standing committees. Public Works, Robot's not here, Representative Cardi.
Well, I don't have a copy of the minutes, but I'll try to remember, and Mr. Wilbur can help if I do. We met on December 19th. Tammy Reed was in to talk about, from Office of the Aging, about the move in 242, and discuss the parking problem down there. So we hashed over some ideas and different things, and hopefully after the first year that something will be done down there. The highway superintendent was in, wanted to transfer some money because of the salt, or sand and salt that we needed because of the last 2 months have been pretty rough on material. And we did that. He also asked for approval of some contracts to extend the asphalt contract, the engineering list, and a couple other ones. There's resolutions for those today, you'll see them. And Mr. Zerke was in, and we talked about the third floor. There is a leak. The contractor was supposed to come in the following week. I haven't heard if that's been resolved. The asbestos problem was taken care of.
Yeah. The Department of Labor was surveyed and done. I mean, everything has been done appropriately.
Basically, that's about it. If there's anything else, you know.
We approved, there's a resolution here today that approves all the equipment purchases for the year. So just so everybody knows, that's everything for the year, all taken care of today. If it seemed like a lot.
There's also, help me remember the details of this, there's also difficulty with the bridge culvert project on County 16, in town of Exeter. Apparently the state, where funding comes from for that, is following federal guidelines, and they keep moving the goalpost. Every time we provide them with the information they ask for additional information, and it's taking time to go back and get all of that information. And there's actually some question on whether we're going to be able to get this done in the next construction season because of the delays and the funding.
And we also continued our discussion about brine, and Superintendent Brimmer has done some research on whether it's possible for us and whether or not it might be a good idea to start a small pilot project, perhaps over on the eastern side of the county, collaborating with Cobblestone. So we're still looking into that.
Part of the problem with that is it's not a matter of just putting some brine on a truck. There's a lot of infrastructure and support that goes along with that. Equipment. The capability of making all that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? IGA, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Chairman Bliss. We met on December 10th. We had the Board of Elections come in and request their conference attendance in Albany, which we approved. They did give us final numbers on early voting, 367 early voters. We did discuss the costs involved with early voting, and they are going to be coming back to us with recommendations for that process going forward. We did have a resolution to pay the inspector's mileage for out of district for early voting. It did involve some additional staffing, as we expected that it would, and the additional funds were made available to pay the inspectors. Personnel regarding, we did approve to reappoint the Democrat Commissioner of Elections, Michael Henrici, which that is before you today in the consent agenda. Also, we were established as lead agency in the type 2, for the CBDG grant that the Department of Planning is putting forward. And so the environmental reviews will be done with the county as lead agency. We are purchasing 2 new trolleys, 80% federal funding, 20% state. So no cost to the county for those, and that resolution is in the consent agenda as well as the 4-town consolidation group that we interviewed 2 respondents to the RFP, and this is with regards to the 4-town consolidation: Decatur, Maryland, Westford, and Worcester. That has been in discussion for a number of years. The group that we chose will determine feasibility of the consolidation and then help us plan out the next steps and help us choose the best path forward in that potential and precedent-setting consolidation, should that be successful. Very interesting listening to the RFP responses. Really some great experience, but it broadened our understanding of everything that goes into a consolidation of this nature, and I look forward to seeing what happens next. We don't have a date for our next meeting. Hopefully we'll be setting that today. Any questions?
Hearing none, thank you. And we will move on to Human Services. Representative Lappin.
As I remember, kind of what we discussed. So I'll start off with the meeting this morning. We met at 9:30 to discuss, turnover that occurred in this DSS. They had a couple of resignations at the caseworker position, and they had a very serious resignation from the Child Protective Services supervisor. The position needs to be posted for 10 days so before we can fill the position, and so we're trying to figure out a way to expedite filling positions that are vacant and funded. I think that is a top priority moving forward. So the next meeting, or the previous meeting took place on December 10th. We renewed an agreement with OFO for Code Blue housing-related expenses not to exceed $39,752. We extended the ICANN agreement for preventative workers to March 31st, 2020. We did a couple of budget transfers, and we went over the department's annual report, and copies of which will be sent to the full board and be kept on file in the auditor's office. We had a discussion regarding snow tires for our fleet, and discussed kind of the need for snow tires so that DSS workers can access, their territories safely and without fear of sliding off the road or becoming having their vehicles disabled. And then we also discussed kind of burials. It's an ongoing discussion with the Health and Ed Committee. One of the coroners, Christian Schaefer, has volunteered to assist with researching the use of the county cemetery. However, a survey needs to be done prior to any sort of future use. And the Funeral Directors Association has requested a review of our policy resolution that establishes all aspects of payroll costs. And Eve Willis will be sending out information on that in that regard. And that's about it. We have yet to schedule our next meeting for January, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just going to take the opportunity, again, we're talking about the delay in hiring people that are needed rapidly. I think it's time that we put in place a policy that allows the department head, in conjunction with the treasurer and the personnel officer, sign-offs to allow that to happen. If there's a time that we need to restrict that or have a moratorium on hiring because of budget restraints, we can always do that. But I think it's a tremendous waste of time and to go through this process all the time for something that's, a position that's budgeted and it's funded.
And this idea was brought up by Representative Frazier via email. I think it's a good one. I felt bad for Eve having to spend her time during the holidays to contact all of the HSC members to, fill a position that basically ground her department to a halt. So I really think that it should be a high priority for this board to figure out a way to expedite matters.
I've been asking for this since I've been on board.
Agreed. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to PSLA, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Chairman. We met on December 16th. Our 911 Communications Director, Rob O'Brien, came in. He asked for permission to fill and approve a vacant funded dispatcher position. We're back to that conversation. To carry that along, any recently vacant funded position should be able to be filled by the department head, committee chair, board chair, treasurer, personnel officer. It's all in line. They shouldn't need to wait. If it goes 2 or 3 months being vacant, then they should be able to come through, they should have to go through the committee system, because obviously it's not emergent. But a recently vacant funded position should be able to fill. It's one of the arguments everyone sitting here has had about promoting a county administrator. We don't need a county administrator to do that. We have the capacity, the power to change policy, and we should do it. Then Rob came to us about filling the assistant director position. We approved that. The sheriffs asked for multiple budget and contract purchases that were all in 2020. They are all in the packet here today. We discussed in short order something that the sheriff and the county should be looking at in this calendar year, the water report of the public safety building from Labella. That also is the Meadows building, it isn't just, but that was something that we approved, that study in 17, and we just got that back. The water and sewer system, that should be a priority of the PSLA this coming year. Personnel officer Penny Gentile came in. She asked for approvals to reappoint Alan Kakoma and Michael Trossett as the public defender and county attorney. We approved those are in the packet today also. Our public defender, Mike Trossett, came in. He wanted to approve stipends for the first part of 2020 for the CAP program. Once phase 2 is implemented, those stipends will go away. Our cleaner, Victor Jones, came in regarding emergency services. We appointed, gave them permission to reappoint 3 deputy fire coordinators, who gave us an update on the fire training center. We do have permission and capability and allowed to negotiate with the one respondent on the RFP. Art is currently between purchasing and art. They're eliminating things that were redundant and not necessary in that RFP, and then those numbers will change. And we're looking forward to finally moving ahead on that. We discussed at length about our countywide emergency services, ambulances versus fire car, and our hybrid of the two systems. Another top priority of the county should be coming this year. On another end of that, Representative Oberacker, myself, Art, and Victor met with Congressman Tay and multiple agencies up in the Worcester, Rosebloom, Decatur, Maryland, Skaneateles area on that same day on January 16th. Very productive, lots of input. Denise Albert came in. She requested some purchases and training for the Child Advocacy Center and some transfers. Our Fire Advisory Board meeting is on January 16th at 7 p.m. at the Meadows. Good luck to the next committee. Any questions?
Thank you, Representative Frazier. Health and Ed, Representative Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman Bliss. The Health and Ed Committee met December 9th. It was a pretty light meeting. We heard from Tammy McDonald, Office for the Aging. We filled some vacant funded positions, appointed various committee appointments. Sorry, I'm working off my phone today too. We talked about the move into 242 Main Street and the estimated timing on that. We were thinking late spring or early summer. Approved a number of contracts for the year for Office for the Aging. We met with Don Smyers of Cornell Cooperative. He distributed a sort of a form template resolution that various cooperatives across the state are approving or asking for regarding state support for Cornell Cooperative. We did, as a committee, endorse that. We approved the Cornell Cooperative contracts. We discussed the ag implementation specialists and talked about moving forward into the coming year. We heard from Penny Seeger of Office of Employment and Training, and she gave us an update on the summer youth work program. She explained that 85 local youths worked at 45 different work sites, and about 6 of those youths went on to additional employment. They were placed after the program. Finally, we heard from the Department of Health, approved a transfer, and that was really it for the day. We do not have another meeting set.
Any questions?
Actually, Don is here. He was just saying that resolution that Health and Ed had brought through, or that CCE brought through Health and Ed, is not in our agenda today.
That's because I didn't get a request, and the minutes were not all up when we were trying to put it together.
So you would have seen it in Health and Ed minutes if you would have seen it. Otherwise, it would have had to come from somebody on the board or Health and Ed.
And actually, it always has to come from someone else. I mean, we do, if we can, look back through all of the minutes.
Right.
But they're not always all posted at the time that I'm preparing the agenda. So when there's an outside group like Cornell Cooperative, please just be sure in your committee that someone lets my office know that this was approved, and we're more than happy to put it on. So I don't want Don to take offense at that. We certainly would put it on the agenda.
So we'll
There's always a chance too that the minutes, they haven't been approved, so there could be an inaccuracy. So I think it's best that the chair of the committee or their designee be sure to forward that on.
Don, I could be wrong, but this was probably not especially time sensitive. I mean, the budget season is...
Well, it's not. We're all working on good faith. But it's always a difficult issue for me, being an outside agency, what the protocol is. But Alan, I did send you an email advising you right after the committee meeting that there was a series of the contracts and the motion of support, or the resolution of support.
I did not see that, Don.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I understand.
We had 3 board meetings in 1 month and 56 resolutions on the agenda. So we did our best, and it is best if the committee gets in touch with me because I don't always get all the outside emails. So again, you know, if you're the committee chair and you've got an outside agency, just, you know, stop by my office when the committee's over, you know, let Melanie know, and we're happy to put it on the agenda.
Thank you. So I think we can do this next month?
Sounds good.
Any other questions? Solid Waste, Representative McCarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on December 12th. Karen reported the department has received additional invoices from Montgomery County for leachate removal due to the rainy weather conditions in the spring. We had to transfer $35,000 to cover that. She also requested approval to extend the current electronic recycling contract with Resolutions through 2020. We did that. She also requested to approve to create a part-time transfer station attendant position. We've had one out on medical leave, which is back, and she needs a backup person so when one of them are gone, so we did approve that, and that is resolution number 40. Jordan Clements was in, district manager for soil and water. He gave a report. He was working on a manure storage facility in Morris, a non-point source grant waiting to be released in March. Ag Environmental Management Program is in its 16th year, improving resource and technology assistance to farmers for next year. Karen gave the solid waste reports for November. We took in a little over 3,000 tons. Leslie is leaving, and Amy Wynette is there. She's a new person working for them. Amy reported that the Climate Smart Community Invitation will receive notification whether or not the program was funded on or around December 19th, so whoever's on the committee should hear about that. Amy's going to be the new representative of the association and also stay with Climate Smart. And we also, Karen gave a report that Tammy Harris had attended the landfill oversight committee regarding on December 10th. The annual engineer report from Montgomery County is available to view in Karen's office if somebody wants to look at it. And that's pretty well it, and we did not set a meeting date.
Any questions?
I was just going to provide a quick update for the board. The Climate Smart Institute received partial funding in the CFA process, or CFA kind of grant awards, and then we also received $50,000 in funding for the Otsego County Energy Task Force. And then Amy Wyan is our OCCA's new executive director, replacing Leslie, and she'll be also assuming her position on the Otsego County Energy Task Force Leadership Committee.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Administration, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Chairman Bliss. So many of these things you've heard already, but they all came through administration on December 20th. Planning presented the MRB group as they've chosen consultant for the four-town consolidation, so we voted to have them accept that. 2 trolleys. We did extend the Evolution electronic recycling contract for the solid waste department. and also the part-time transfer station attendant, as already mentioned. The Board of Elections, as was reported in IGA, we approved their attendance at their conference. The county attorney, we established that we would have a workplace violence assessment team as per written in our workplace violence prevention policy. That will be shaping up as per under Ellen's instruction or guidance, I think would probably be the best word. We did vote to a resolution for the county attorney to come up with and craft a resolution to amend or delay the bail reforms, which is resolution number 49. And I know there has been some discussion on that, so there may be more discussion on that. Video conferencing system policy, thanks to our video conferencing system that we have in the conference room, we can Zoom conference all around the globe, as we did demonstrate with our treasurer who was in Africa during budget season. But we do need to have a policy now that we have this technology, so we approved that. Public defender explained the reimbursements that have to do with raised age and the counsel at first arraignment legislation. He's been very successful in gaining reimbursement money and getting it back into the county. Also, gave us some broader details that there has been a significant savings in the 18B courts due to a revised schedule, and which is good news. E911, we approved the assistant director position and also agreed to lease Verizon space on the tower in Middlefield. We also approved the lease buyout from AT&T, which I do understand there will be further discussion on that as well. And hopefully we'll be able to figure out the best way forward there. Opportunities for Office for the Aging, filling a position and approving contracts for 2020. Department of Health had a funds transfer, and with the Highway Department, as was reported during Public Works, 5 contracts were approved. Also, budget modifications, transfers to pay for the end of 2019's fuel and salt, and the purchase of 8 vehicles. Department of Social Services, as reported by Representative Lappin, we approved that Code Blue payment, and also other budget transfers and contracts. And here, the clerk of the board presented the NISAC request to attend the NISAC conference January 27th and 28th for Representative Martini. We did approve representatives attending up to $500, and this time I would like to encourage all of the new members to register. Your registration fee is waived as a new member, but just to make sure you circle back with Carol McGovern, the clerk of the board, to make sure your mileage in your hotel could also be reimbursed if they go above a $250 threshold. So it's a very helpful conference to attend, lots of information, and I do recommend it. But just make sure that we all check in with Carol. Child Advocacy Center, we approved the transfer to do their training. Also, a new coordinator is coming in, but Denise Oliver will continue as a forensic interviewer, so she'll still be associated with that office. We voted to reappoint, and as you'll see in the consent agenda, and as Representative Frazier mentioned, some of these already: County Attorney, Clerk of the Board, Democrat Commissioner of Elections, and Public Defender. They're in the packet today. We're continuing on with our enterprise lease program. 11 vehicles are coming in for 2020. We also did transfers for building services, for fuel, and also transfers and modifications to continue paying for the jail renovation. And I would like to say at this time that the Administration Committee, which is the committee that is in charge of policies, will be revisiting the policy, and we will prioritize revision of to authorize department heads to fill recently vacant funded positions. So hopefully we'll be addressing that at our next meeting. And I do want to just briefly say the occupancy tax, resolution number 55, which we did vote at administration to move that forward, but I would like to I will be pulling that off of the consent agenda, just to do further outreach and education with the people who are involved in collecting the tax. It's very important that we have a complete understanding of it from the ground up. I've received a lot of communication regarding this, and some of it is positive, like, great, we would like to have some participation from people who don't live here to help pay our bills, especially with regards to roads. But there was some concern that it would be going into effect in 2020, which they have contracts in place for 2020 that would affect them. We just want to get the word out that how this would roll out. It wouldn't be for this year. It would be something that they would have known well in advance. Their needs for notifying their paying customers would be taken into account on the startup date, and so I just want to address all of those things, and so we'll be talking about that a little bit later too. So that is pretty much the Administration Committee report.
Any questions?
Just a comment. I did hear from one of my constituents this week on the occupancy tax issue. And, the point was really the one you just made about when does it go into effect and how does it affect the contracts we already have in place. So thank you for.
Oh, right, yeah, and I did. It has to be approved. It's quite a number of hoops that we have to, or hurdles that we have to get over. Our assemblyman it has to pass the Assembly, it has to pass the Senate, and then it also has to be actually signed into law by the governor. So it's a lengthy process, and one that I feel we may have condensed it into a time frame that didn't allow for the proper amount of outreach.
Anything else? Okay, so move on to special committees. Negotiations, Representative Frazier, President of the Board report. So, performance review and goal setting, Representative Marietta.
Actually, I don't remember the date of the meeting, but we did meet and met with Brian Picorni about IT and just plugging in some of his priorities into for the administration committee work plan.
You were going strategic planning, or were you going?
Oh, sorry.
You got the wrong performance review.
Oh, performance review and goal setting. We are somewhat off track. We have to get back on track with completing our evaluations, and obviously with Gary's departure, that kind of was part of our challenges in completing our evaluation process. The last meeting, we actually, I think, had an issue with having, although it's not an official committee, we didn't even have quorum at it, but the evaluations move forward. So at this point, we have to reconnect with Penny and try to figure out how to finalize the last couple of department heads who have not been evaluated that were supposed to be evaluated in 2019. Sorry. But yeah, strategic planning, we met with Brian Picorni for IT.
Okay, so we got two there. Ones. Any questions on either of those reports? Okay, good. And budget. Representative Kennedy.
Well, thank you, Chairman Bliss. I didn't prepare a budget committee report because, well, we have one now. I guess that's a very short report. But Thank you to the committee, thank you to the representatives who attended the committee meetings and weighed in on the budget. We were able to actually end up allocating less fund balance than we did last year. And I'd like to just say that going forward, I would hope, one of the things that was brought to my attention, that as the county realizes and faces challenges with regards to funding all of the things that we want to fund, that it's also our responsibility to try and re-examine the budget and maybe try to find places to cut or modify less spending in some areas or create greater efficiencies so that we can spend more money on things like the highways and that we want to spend the money on. So just as a thought heading into the new season.
And any other reports that anyone would like to comment on any outside meetings that I've attended? Hearing none. Special reports. Briefly, we have Assemblyman Salka here who wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to those newly elected members, congratulations, and to those newly re-elected members, well, my condolences. But no, this is a great board, and you men and women are doing a great job for Otsego County. In our ongoing effort to keep people in the district apprised of what's going on in Albany, of course, the big issue that we're going to go back to is the $6 billion deficit that the state budget is looking at. And just to break it down a little bit, $4 billion of that is in Medicaid. And so there are proposals. My sources in the budget office say that there's a very active, very aggressive discussion going on right now on what can be done to solve what a lot of us feel is a crisis. And so our concern is going to be to make sure that the state doesn't do a slash and burn approach to Medicaid funding, and people that don't deserve it could get hurt. So, we're being very vigilant on what some of the suggestions are as far as resolving the Medicaid crisis. And of course, on top of that is around a $2.5 billion operational deficit. So, these are going to be some sizable challenges. There hasn't been this kind of deficit in the state budget since 2008. And of course, in 2008, you had the financial crisis, which you could attribute a large percentage of that problem to. And this year, unfortunately, it seems with the rest of the country doing great, New York State really, has a $6 billion budget it shouldn't have. But at any rate, that's what you pay us to be able to do, is to solve these kinds of problems. Where I'm getting probably the most amount of calls and emails and people voicing concerns is with the new bail discovery reform bill that was passed. And what we're going to try to do is take a look at some of the concerns that have been voiced by not only law enforcement, but our district attorneys, and for people, the public safety advocates, that this bail reform and discovery law is got a lot of potential implications and unintended consequences that we're going to hope to be able to review in this next upcoming legislative session. But AIM, which is aid to the municipalities, that's kind of up in the air right now. The latest proposal, of course, is that the counties pay the local municipalities out of their sales tax money. To me, that's just borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. But and the winter recovery money, which was around $67 million, we don't look to anticipate that those funds are going to be available for the 2020 budget. It's going to be a rough budget year. And I think a lot of the pain, which has been a long time coming, is going to be distributed, amongst many agencies, many entities. And so what we're doing as an upstate contingency, both Republicans and Democrats, is we're fighting hard to make sure that upstate New York fights that disproportionate amount of money that usually does go downstate. So there's been a lot of discussion on a bipartisan level about what to do with that, and I'm actually looking forward to being able to get back next week and start the discussions rolling. Single-payer health care will probably come up this year. That has a huge financial implication of anywhere from $150 to $250 billion to get that rolling. So, there are some major issues that are going to be coming up in the New York State legislature this year, and hopefully, in keeping with the practice that we've tried to maintain, and that's to keep people informed, to keep our legislators informed throughout the district, to keep the people, our constituents informed. So my door is always open to the men and women here and anybody in the district that needs any kind of service or any kind of advice or any kind of information. We'll be there for you, and just want to, again, wish everybody a Happy New Year, and I know that there'll be sizable challenges this year, but I think this board looks like they're up to the challenge, and I'm always going to be available if you need any kind of help or advice whatsoever.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I do have, I just wanted to comment on the Medicaid, as most of our levy that we levy for our tax, for our budget, it goes to pay our portion of Medicaid. So I was wondering and does the possibility exist that instead of cutting Medicaid recipients, they add to the burden on the counties? Is that an option? And if so, would it not be?
That's a possibility. You know, it's interesting that when I took office 12 years ago in the Madison County Board of Supervisors, I was chair of the committee of social services and mental health. And our appropriation for Medicaid went from around $6 billion. I think this year it's about close to $6 million. Talking billion when you talk the state, which is mind-boggling. But it went from around $6 million to close to $14 million in a relatively short amount of time. Now, of course, the counties do it. There is a 3% cap, all right, on county appropriations for Medicaid, and I hope and pray that that's not manipulated or played with. But these are times that we have not seen in a long, long time, in particular in Medicaid. The problem with Medicaid spending is that when you offer programs, all right, that are subsidized by Medicaid, when you talk about getting rid of them or cutting them, you're talking about a very, very volatile issue, very politically unpopular. But I'm hoping that what we will do in the discussion of Medicaid is to make the programs more efficient. Invariably, that's going to mean someone's going to be cut. That's just the way it's going to happen, in my estimation at least. So, as I said previously, we're hoping to be able to minimize the pain, if you will, of the potential Medicaid cuts. Right now, the governor's talking about a 1% cut in Medicaid spending. Hard to say exactly what the figures are going to be until we hear his budget, what the implications of the cut like that will interpret into an actual savings. So the problem was that last year we had $1.7 billion that should have been put against the 2019 budget. Well, the governor likes to be able to stay within this cap, which I voted to make the cap permanent. In a lot of respects, it's a good idea if it gives people predictability with it. But in order to comply with that cap, he took that $1.7 billion bill and he shifted it to the 2020 budget. Now, what happens when you kick the can down the road with those kind of figures is they invariably go up. So instead of a $1.7 billion that we should have paid for out of the 2019 budget, which would have left us a balance of around, it's fuzzy math, but around $2 billion that would have been committed from the 2020 budget, now we're talking over $4 billion. So by delaying those payments, he caused an issue that now we have to be able to figure a way out of. So along with the $4 billion deficit, I've heard an operational deficit of 2.1, anywhere from 2.1 to 4 billion. If you look at the numbers, and these are just projected numbers, if we keep on spending the way we're spending, if we keep on deficit spending, which we're doing with major programs like Medicaid, by 2023 we could be looking at deficits of 10, 12, 15 billion dollars. So there's got to be a serious discussion about Medicaid reform. It is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. There's got to be serious discussion about Medicaid reform. It does touch the counties because, again, same in Madison County, the same in Oneida County, in my district, that's a major portion of the county budget. and obviously a major portion of what taxpayers are shelling out when they get their tax bill. So we're hoping that, again, from a bipartisan standpoint, that we can sit down with the people, the leaders, the governor's office, and come up with some ideas. A lot being discussed. But you got to understand too, Medicaid is an incredibly complicated program. I think the line item for Medicaid with federal and state monies in this last budget was about $70 billion. It's the biggest line item. So obviously, being the biggest line item, it's going to take the most amount of discussion and probably going to be one of the most problematic to try to resolve. But there's good minds at work on this problem. I have 30 years of experience in the medical business, both from the clinical side and on the management side, so I have an understanding about how Medicaid is dispersed, how Medicaid funds are dispersed. One of the big points, and I'll close in saying that one of the big points that we're trying to do is protect the providers. Upstate New York in particular has a big problem attracting providers. And one of the reasons why we have a hard time is because of the demographics. Providers have a business to run, and you have to pay your bills, you have to pay your staff, you have to pay your insurance and your overhead. When we talk about Medicaid reform, some people talk about, well, let's cut money to providers. To me, that would be the wrong direction to go. If we want to maintain good services, good health care, and good communities, we really need to make sure that people that are taking care of the health needs of our communities are, they spend years and years in college, they have incredible amount of overhead, they deserve to be compensated accordingly. One positive spin on this, there will be a very robust discussion on drug prices. All right, Medicaid right now pays out quite a bit of money, so we're hoping for the discussion to involve prescription reform. And we're also hoping that in the million less, well, there's about a little less than 1 million people in New York State that aren't insured. We're hoping that we could go over some options on how to make sure they have good quality health care. So, I mean, these are, again, so many things just coming together.
You said a little less than 1 million?
Right now, New York State does a pretty good job, especially, it's debatable about whether or not it was worth the price tag, but when the Affordable Care Act was instituted, New York State did a pretty good job of insuring a lot of people that weren't insured. So right now, out of the 19 million people in New York State, you have a little less than 1 million who actually don't have insurance. So when we discuss issues like the New York Health Act, which is universal, which is Medicaid for all, do we need to spend $250 billion to insure less than 1 million people? And there are many people that are saying, no, there's got to be a better way. And we have some discussion going on right now and some proposals that we're going to put forward in this next legislative session that will give some options on how we can make sure that those people have the insurance, the health care that they need without really literally bankrupting the state. I mean, we only bring in about $80 billion a year in revenue. So when you're talking about initiating a program that costs anywhere from $150 to $250 billion, it's mind-boggling that we would have to be able to put that kind of money out to insure, I don't want to say that few people, but relatively speaking, a single-digit portion of the population. So we're working on that. It's always a constant struggle to maintain our presence when the downstate contingency has such a strong presence politically. So, we, contrary to popular belief, we do get along. We get along quite well. And we realize that the needs of the 121st Assembly District might not necessarily be the same as the needs of a district down in Queens or in Buffalo, but there is commonality there. We do realize what our purpose is, and hopefully we're going to make this a productive session. When people ask me that, how's the session going to go, I say, tell you in June, okay, when it's over. So, but again, I'll need input from bodies like this, from constituents, from businesses, and we're trying very hard to make sure that we increase our presence in the upcoming year in Otsego County. I have a small staff, so it's kind of tough, but if it means a little bit more shoe leather, then so be it. Again, but my door is always open. If you're in Albany, we're actually moving our district office a little closer to the southern part of the district. We've been in Oneida. We're going to try to have the district office in the next 6 months down in the Morrisville area. It's a little closer. And of course, we did have some satellite hours that we held in Oneonta, and it went over very well. So we plan on following up and having more satellite office hours in Oneonta and Cooperstown and up around maybe the Edmiston area, and so that we can make sure that we're kind of bringing government to the people more than them having to come to us. Obviously, people can't take a ride to Albany on a regular basis, so it's incumbent upon us to be there for them in their hometowns. And we held 12 town hall meetings. We hope to hold many more. Hopefully, I think our next one might be scheduled in Richfield Springs, but I'll have to check. So, but thank you for the time to address the, yes, Ed.
You asked for some contact and feedback. As far as Medicaid, the reforms that have been put in place in the last few years have benefited the county. There was a point where 95% of our property tax that we generated in Otsego County went to pay for Medicaid.
Right.
We are, in 2020, we have a $12 million revenue from our property tax. Our Medicaid that we will be paying is going to be over $10 million. So I mean, just put that in perspective of what we can generate, what we control, and where the money goes. So those are some numbers I thought you may be able to.
Oh, those are great numbers, and again, I got the numbers that are coming in all the time. You know, you got to remember that Medicaid is OPWDD, it's rural health care. What we're going to try to do is to focus obviously on the needs of rural upstate New York, which is a majority of my district, and the big accent to us, and again, because I worked in rural health care for years, is to make sure we have a good provider base. I know Bassett, they're having a tough time getting providers. I know that the hospital that I represent over in Madison County Community Memorial, I was on staff there for 16 years. They're having a very difficult time finding providers. So when you talk about cutting reimbursement to providers, you really got to consider what the implications are going to be. And sometimes, in the heat of the moment and the back and forth that goes on in Albany, sometimes those things aren't considered. But it's up to us to kind of be the squeaky wheels on that, which we plan on being. And I think, like I said, I think Medicaid is... Medicaid, and like I said, where I'm getting a huge amount of feedback from is the bail and discovery reform. So we're hoping to be able to review that and possibly offer chapter amendments that might change some of the particulars on the bail reform, but we don't know yet. We don't know yet.
Yes, I just had a question on a different topic, which is really process related. But the county has several home rule items that we're interested in this year. And I know with the changes of the political calendar, there was some talk that you might end the session earlier. So I just wanted to inquire about that.
You're right. The session usually ends around the end of June, but after the legislature changed the schedule, they realized that a bunch of them have to be in their districts for primaries. So they cut the session short by almost a month. Instead of the 26th and the 27th that will be ending session, supposedly according to the calendar at least, will be ending session on June 2nd. So if you do have any home rule bills, please get them to me, because obviously I've got other home rule bills from the other parts of my district too. But get them to me ASAP. I'm in regular communication with Senator Seward and my colleagues in the Assembly. So by all means, get those to us as soon as possible. The wording, and as a matter of fact, I spoke to Senator Seward, and we're going to try to get those on the floor of the respective houses a lot sooner this year. In the last 48 hours of a session, and I've only been to one, okay, but from what I understand, this is the way it runs. There's a flurry of activity. Bills are getting passed about every minute. Okay, so yeah, every minute to 2 minutes. If you go and get a cup of coffee or get up and go to the bathroom, you got to make sure you didn't miss 10 bills. Okay, and a lot of them are home rule bills. So, but I know that the senator and I have been talking about it, and again, my word of advice is to get those to us in the wording, because of course you've got a process that you have to do here, and so we want to make sure that we don't end up scrambling to get it passed in the final hours.
Right, it takes us two months to get through.
Exactly. So if you want to reach out, give me a call or my staff, and we'll make sure that we have a heads up on that, and we'll walk those through.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year.
Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. A motion to dispense with the reading of all reports and resolutions.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, and opposed? Motion carried. Is there any representative wishing to remove a resolution from the consent agenda? We have 3 so far, 27, 49, and 55. Any others? Okay, call for action on the consent agenda.
Actually, when, I'm sorry, I just need to know when I should actually table resolution number 55.
Oh, when we go to...
After we do the consent agenda? Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Just a point of order.
I'll make a motion on the
Consent agenda?
consent agenda.
Second, any discussion? No discussion. Roll call vote.
Frazier?
Aye.
Farwell?
Aye.
Brockway?
Aye.
Stammel?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Overacre? Bliss?
Aye.
Marietta?
Yes.
McCarty?
Aye.
Wilbur?
Aye.
Oliver?
Aye.
Martini?
Aye.
Lappin?
Aye.
Basile? Aye.
5,694 ayes, 0 noes, 534 absent. Consent agenda is passed. Okay, resolution 27. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, do we have to go in order, or could we just
We don't
skip
have
to
to go
55? We'd just like to take care of 55. I would like to have the IGA committee vote to table this resolution.
Table it or repeal it?
Table.
We've
Table,
already pulled it, but we can pull it from the consent
I'd
agenda.
like to pull it from the consent agenda.
For a minute.
Withdraw, and then, can we withdraw it?
Okay, so is this the bed text?
Yeah.
Bed tax.
Okay, so that should be so until the chair reads, the clerk of the board reads the resolution, it's not within the purview of the board.
Oh, okay.
And so because we're trying to do a local law here and we've had the public hearing, I think what I recommend is that it be brought up for a vote and then you can move to table it.
We can't just pull it out of the consent agenda and not have any vote on it today?
You can table it without any vote, and that's what I would recommend you do, because we're trying to keep everything in line. We've had the public hearing. If you return it to committee and you make any changes, then we have to go back to square one. We have to have a public notice, a public hearing. And if that's the route you want to go, that's totally fine. I'm just letting you know the option.
You're talking about the bed tax?
Yeah.
Bed tax increase.
Yeah.
So I think what she's saying is have a motion in a second and then table
Table, right.
for prior to
Discussion.
vote.
Right,
Discussion,
And
a motion
discussion,
to
discussion
table.
would be to table,
right.
Okay.
if that's what you're
Second on the tabling, a vote on the tabling.
Right.
Then table.
But if we were to just remove it from the consent agenda
And we
prior
would
to
have to have public hearings.
another public hearing,
Yep.
Right, because you can't just remove something from the consent agenda without doing something with it. So you would have to refer it back to committee, which is what usually happens. And if you do that, and if you make any changes at all, then we have to go back to the public notice, the public hearing. If you table it, and then you all, as a group, decide, well, we want to tweak this or that, in other words, kind of minor changes, then we can go forward. You've already had your public hearing. If you make a change that's bigger than that, then obviously we're going to have to go back to square one. So it sounded to me like what you wanted was a chance to reach out to others and to advise them of the process. So if that is the reason and you're not really planning on making a whole lot of substantive changes to the law, then I would recommend that the resolution be brought to the Assembly and that the Assembly move to table it. Then you can bring it back from the table at the February meeting, and we would not have to have another public hearing.
Okay. So, with not seeming to like debate this ahead of time or anything, but if we, right now it's in, we had been under the impression that we could do either a 1% hike or a 2% hike, and the local law reflects a 2% hike. Just wondering if we were to decide to do a 1% hike, would that be substantial?
Yes.
Okay.
So if that's what you think you have in mind, then you might want to withdraw it from the Assembly.
Well, but if we don't withdraw it, we have an option of going either way. We can still always have another public hearing.
Correct.
Yeah, it's,
So,
okay. All right.
let's,
I don't know that without having the discussion with the outreach. You know, I just wanted to know exactly what we're dealing with, so.
And what would happen is if you did make a substantial change, which is totally fine, the final vote would be in March. You know, we'd have to have a public hearing, which would be set at the February meeting for the March meeting, and then you would vote on it, and we would get it over to the state. And that was one of the reasons why I asked him, because I had heard that rumor that they're going to make early. They are.
All right.
We have to get hopping, I guess is what it means.
Is there a time element to this in the table? You're talking 1 month, but I was under the impression it was 2 months. The table, is there an end time where you have to act on something, you can't just leave the table forever?
You have to bring it back in 2 months, otherwise it's sort of...
2 months or less. So
2 months or less, yeah. You can bring it back in February, you can bring it back in March, but after that you can't. And if you don't bring it back from the table by then, it is of no force and effect because you didn't bring it back.
Okay, let's go in order here.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to educate on that one.
Yes, sorry about that.
Resolution 27.
Resolution 27, approving the chair of the board to sign a letter of intent to assign lease agreement to Black Dot Capital and Real Estate Group LLC over after McCarty, Wilbur, Farwell, Lappin.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Who seconded that?
You can't, I think you're next.
I'll second it then.
Discussion. Who actually pulled it?
So, I pulled this, I voted against this in Public Works. And my reasoning for that was I wasn't sure. I felt like we didn't have enough information to go on as to whether this was a good deal or not. The amount that is being offered here, $300,183.28, minus closing costs. If you divide that by what we're getting in payments right now for our lease, which is $2,207 a month, that means that in 11.2 years, that would be the break-even point for us in terms of our lease agreement with AT&T. So I don't know for sure that this is a terrible idea. I just felt like we needed to consult somebody with the expertise to help us with that. And we have been attempting for the past 2 years to get a tower lease management company in place. That our first attempt didn't work out. We went out again. We have some response from the RFP. So that's a possibility. I also looked, I just tried to do a little bit of searching around on the internet about this company and what I learned, Black Dot, and what I learned is that a company like Black Dot gets hired by a cell phone carrier, in this case AT&T, to basically try to negotiate on AT&T's behalf for better terms for AT&T. And So I just want everybody to be aware of what's going on, is we have a lease, and we're making a certain amount of money per month. And then AT&T is saying, we'll buy you out 11, and it's worth 11.2 years of leasing. And there's been some discussion about how that it might be smart for the county to take this, because 5G might be coming, satellite, cellular could be coming, and that's maybe why the company is making this offer. I tried to research a little into that, and it looks like the reason why companies like Black Dot and AT&T are working together to try to do buyout agreements is because they have money right now, because investors are interested in 5G. They're putting their money into cell companies, so they're flush with cash. They want to do something with it that's favorable to them, and so they're offering municipalities buyout agreements. I'll be voting no for this.
Anyone else? Keith?
The way I understand it, the only thing is if we don't do this, there's possibly they'll just move somewhere else and we'll end up with nothing.
That's true.
And
that's a risk.
The 11 years with technology the way it is nowadays could change entirely where they don't even need the cell tower to start with.
Antennas on telephone poles.
So here's a question that maybe we need to go to the experts with, but in terms of if we accept the lease buyout, does that now put us out of the loop with further negotiations?
Fraser, Cooking, Stanwell, McCarty.
Second? Okay, yes.
I just wanted to say one thing. I apologize that Board of Supervisors, of course, it should be Board of Representatives, and we're just going to treat that as a typographical error and fix it.
That's on page
91.
95, page 95, resolution 49, page 95.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, the correction is on page 95, the resolution is on page 86.
Okay.
Wait, no, page 95 is part of resolution 50.
Yep. The error is on page 91.
Yeah, the error's on page 91.
91 and 92.
Thank you.
It continues, I guess, maybe there's multiple references.
Yeah, there's three.
Yeah, my page numbers are
For
different.
some reason, the chair has a different page number, so sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Anyway, we had a second, correct? Any discussion?
You can go.
Okay, sure, I'll start. I have concerns with the bail and discovery reform law. I think it takes away a lot of, specifically the bail part of it, takes away a lot of discretion from judges, justices that is unnecessary. But I don't love how this resolution is written. I think it clearly came from somebody else. It's a little more strongly worded than we tend to write our resolutions, I'll put it that way. But I also have concerns with a lot of the whereases. It implies or directly states that everyone who's being held has committed these crimes. And that's not how our criminal justice system works. People have been charged with crimes. They're innocent until proven guilty. Some of those people have committed the crimes, but not everybody. And we've seen pretty high-profile cases, even just in the last 5 or so years in Oneonta, 2 individuals held for homicide who were found later not to have committed those acts. So it happens. So I think we need to be very careful with the language that we're using. If some amendments are made to this, I could definitely support it. But I think it's kind of sloppily written right now.
Yeah, just for background, it did come from, I think it was Warren County initially, but it has been passed by a few counties. But in the past, we've had several resolutions that we have modified the whereases because personally, people tend to overdo them. most of them aren't even necessary. So I think we could modify this and make it stronger. Yeah.
Could you be a little more specific on a whereas that indicates that the person committed the crime?
Well, yeah, I started underlining, it does it with a number of the whereases. So like on page 87, sorry Dave.
Here we are.
The second whereas down, it says, which means those who have committed these crimes can no longer be held in jail after their arrest. So that's one example. And then it's the same type of thing for almost all.
In other words, I said those charged.
Yeah, that would be more accurate. But it does that with most of the whereases. You know, releasing dangerous child predators, those who have physically harmed or endangered, blah, blah, blah.
And the whereas on page 88?
Most of them, yeah.
Well, yeah, but where it starts to editorialize, you know, crimes for which bail cannot be set shockingly include
And I was just, I don't know, I mean, I understand this came from Schuyler County. It also was passed by Warren County. Did anybody here in Otsego County fact check to make sure that it's accurate? Because a lot of the things I have read say that, and especially in the Vera, one of the reports that was 17 pages long, they went into depth about things for which the carve-outs in this, and sex crimes is one, crimes committed within one household is another. So the public has the impression that if you're accused of domestic violence and the police show up and charge you, that they just give you an appearance ticket and close the door and it's over. And I think that's pretty misleading. I don't know if these are accurate or not. I just felt like that what we're accusing the state of doing and probably and rightly so is to have passed this in haste and without talking to the people who have to enact this. And that's exactly what we just did with this reform bill. And I anticipated this coming, and I tried to take the steps I could to make a better resolution, one that doesn't shy away from the problems with the reforms, because there are problems, but one that was coming from Otsego County on the advice of our district attorney, sheriff, public defender, and probation director. And that's what I asked for, and I'm still asking for that. I would like to see this withdrawn and gone back to committee, and I'd like that committee to be PSLA, whomever is on that committee, because they're the ones in direct contact with those department heads and elected officials. So, can I make that motion? Is that motion to send it back to committee?
Well, yeah.
Send it back to a different committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that mean we'll be able to say, yes, we release it, or does it?
I would suggest we could perhaps,
Because there's other stuff in there that it doesn't address.
Yes,
there's a lot of controversy, I shouldn't say controversy, disagreement over those points that you made, whether these particular crimes
we could do better.
are or are not. And some of it's still under the discretion of the judge, but not as much as they used to have. So if we were to eliminate the, let's see, how many whereases do we have? On the second page, again, my page numbers are different, but the second page of the resolution, so 87 on yours. If we started with the whereas these crimes include those that result in the deaths of innocent people, from there until on the second to last page, that whereas there that says all offenders are currently being held in custody. actually, to the discovery, I'm sorry, the next one, whereas the discovery mandates imposed by the state require, if we were to eliminate all those whereases in between, and then just vote on the remainder.
Just wanted, so I'm looking at the chair's copy, so he's talking about page 87, the bottom two, whereas is all of page 88, all of page 89, and the first whereas on page 90. So then it would just start with the discovery mandates on page 90 and go forward to the end, right?
Correct. This one here.
So in other words, we would not be naming the crimes.
Naming crimes or doing anything like that.
I think the problem would be with that would be that where it says resolved on page 92, number 1 is give the judges the ability to impose bail when appropriate for all of the crimes enumerated herein.
Okay, so
we
we
can
have
just
to
take
strike
all,
that out.
And so you have to take number 1 away. Also, when we get to resolved, number 2, increase the discovery timeline from 15 to a minimum of 45. I've seen other sheriffs, district attorneys advocating for 30 days. I don't myself have enough expertise to know what the appropriate amount of days is. So I kind of would have preferred the input from...
There is no current because, well, see, normally discovery is, it takes an action to get discovery.
Exactly.
So this has gone from an action to require discovery to an automatic, which means every traffic ticket, everything from there on up is automatic discovery under 15 days. Absolutely impossible for us to comply with. So what's going to happen is you're going to have from traffic tickets up to whatever major crime they're going to pick and choose to hang on to, that are going to be skipping out because we can't comply with that discovery time.
And I think the reason they asked for 30 days was they felt that, okay, you know, we'd like to keep it the way it is. In other words, the defense attorney asked for discovery, and if you're going for 15, oh, well, let's do 30. But I mean, to be honest, I think, you know, that, yeah, 45. The problem is that, as you all know, many cases are plea bargained.
Right.
But with only 15 days, you can't figure that out. So it puts an incredible burden on the DA's office. We're just hiring an entirely a full-time ADA to handle this, because if you don't get the discovery in, the case is going to be automatically dismissed. So it kind of went from kind of one extreme to the other. So I think the 30 days was like, okay, you want 15, please, oh please, at least give us 30.
If that discovery is not in on time, there'll be a 30-30 motion.
Right.
Right away.
So I know that the New York State Crime Lab doesn't even turn around evidence within that short of a window. So I feel that lengthening it to 45 is not unreasonable, given that New York State accepts its own shortfalling with regards to evidence that's turned into to those crime labs. It's not coming back within that window.
Some DNA testing takes that longer.
No, and that is the big concern, especially with drug cases. We don't have the proof that the drug is illegal. Then, you know, you can't move forward. And so then, what I've been told by the DAs is that there's this balancing act. Do we get the drug tested, figured out, then go find the person, and hope you can still find them? So it's a tough one.
I'm sorry, I apologize. An issue has come up. I have to leave, so I am obviously not going to be voting on this resolution at this point. So, but I'm fine with whatever decision has been made, but with the adjustments or with it going back to committee. So, but I was just double checking. You for IGA committee. Obviously, there's only 3 of us, but once the bed tax resolution comes up, it's not like IGA committee has to withdraw it at this point. The board itself can, so we don't need the committee. So.
That's the committee list. Yeah. picture of that. Thank you. It doesn't look 435-06-72. Thanks.
I don't, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe a 1-month table for...
Well, part of the issue is in a month, I mean, it takes effect today or yesterday.
Okay, I got you.
I think and that's why as soon as I received it,
Understood.
I asked Ellen to send it out so people would have time to look at it.
Understood.
And see what we can do.
But on the other hand, it was passed in March.
Correct. The overall thing, yes.
Even the
We've been
NISAC white paper
talking
came
about
out on the 20th of
regularly since
December.
then.
That's their second one.
I mean, the other thing that happened with that is it was passed in March. I'm not sure when the governor actually signed it. And in the meantime, the DA's Association, the sheriff, and many other groups were trying to lobby for what they call chapter amendments, which, lets it go forward with some changes. And so I don't know if anyone knows exactly when he signed it, but I think there was a big hope that there were going to be some changes to the bill.
And it also takes some time to research the consequences of the bill. So Ellen has suggested, I'm sorry, go ahead. No.
I was just gonna, sorry, I don't know what you're about to say, but I was just gonna suggest, in addition to all the whereas amendments you recommended, I would just hope we could change the language in the whereas before that section as well, where it says those who have committed these crimes on page 87, just be changed to those who have been charged with committing these crimes.
You gotta add the presumption of innocence.
Sorry, Andrew, where was that?
Page 87, the
page 87.
Yep, second whereas there.
Right now, it feels like we're trying to do a lot with a bill that's clearly, or with a resolution that's clearly not serving the end that it's trying to serve. What is the downside to tabling it for a month to actually get it right, rather than try and continue, we're trying to make a lot of changes here pretty quickly.
Wow.
What happens if we wait a month? I mean, this is already an advisement to the state saying, this is not a great bill. It will still be a great bill in a month.
Well, I think, again, we had this for a little while, but just the timing that, that we need to get our concerns to them. That's why if we edit out a lot of all those resolves and make a few of these changes, it changes it from a whole other page as it is to probably a
Yeah, I
two-page.
think if we researched it, we could come up with a lot more concerns.
Oh, we got rid of it.
You wait a month, you might have a lot more concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have some actual.
We'll have a month to
Well, the concerns would be that we'd be able to document some of the,
Yeah, we could say,
Whereas-
and we have seen X, Y, and Z happen.
I guess.
Go ahead.
go ahead, Dan. Dan, yeah, 2 days.
The other thing I just happened to think of, with this automatic discovery as opposed to
That's the biggest concern.
discovery on request, it is an enormous amount of wasted resources, because I think, Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, many, many, many cases never require discovery because there's a plea reached and it's not necessary.
We're going to put a ton of work on our people.
Or something that's going to be pled down or pled anyway.
But that work is going to happen regardless of whether or not we pass this right now or if we pass it.
But I think if the state gets enough municipalities,
I would push back. I would think that if the state gets enough municipalities saying, this is what it's costing us, exactly.
well, we
to do
can
this.
follow up with that as well.
That is also true.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Adrian. This is essentially a comment letter on a passed, already in effect piece of legislation. It would behoove us to have all our facts organized and include data in a more, probably in a letter format as opposed to like, a resolution. I think that would be more effective, in my opinion. If we're trying to state, concerns with a piece of legislation, and we have very specific points by multiple department heads that would like to be made, I feel like, rather than even a resolution, I feel like a letter is more effective.
Well, the department heads, I think, have been weighing in on this for some time, heavily. If you go to if you've been at the committee meetings, they have weighed
quite loudly.
Yeah, but even if then how come those concerns, weren't listed in a detailed letter along with supporting data? So that's kind of the question that I would ask. I feel like, this resolution, we haven't verified the accuracy of the whereases.
Which that's why we eliminated them.
Well, I have to say this, that the whereases are accurate in that those crimes are the crimes for which, depending on the degree of the crime, there cannot be bail anymore, and I think Dan has been following this. So that part is correct. As an assembly, you can put whatever whereases are in there, but that is correct. Those are the crimes, just for the record.
And in case somebody who may not be aware, Dan is a town justice, so he's was town justice, so he's familiar with all this.
Acceptable for me to have both right now.
I mean, there's no doubt examples exist already. A person making terroristic threats of an anti-Semitic nature has now been released, I think, for the third time.
Well, actually, also one case actually committing assault and then released to do it again.
In that sense, the point about data, I think it is starting to come out, for sure.
Well, I would be in favor of eliminating all the whereases that we've mentioned and editing the resolve to reflect the absence of those whereases.
Was that a motion?
I was just reading through to see if there was anything else in the resolve that we want to change. Ellen suggested in resolve number 1 to eliminate the last 2 words.
Ellen's like, did I?
Well, see, he's got a different page than I do, so we're struggling away here a little bit.
And then I didn't hear any suggestions on the other 3.
These are the ones where we list the specifics, yeah.
Yeah, you got it crossed out.
Right, enumerated here, sorry, yes I did. I did suggest
Can we do on that number 1 on the resolve where they have enumerated out 5 resolve?
Yes.
Could you give judges the ability to impose bail when appropriate, period?
Yes, that's what
that's true, we can even just when appropriate.
And then my other thought was that number 3 is actually a really interesting and appropriate advice to roll it in with misdemeanors and see how that goes, and then take a year before doing felonies. I do endorse that. I think that's a good idea.
Are you done?
Oh yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
On number 2, to Michelle's concern, by having that at 45 days would eliminate a lot of needless discovery, because by that time there may be a plea already in progress.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big push now on misdemeanors to have those resolved, or proposed resolution within 30 days. So giving them 45 days would, I think, be a big help.
The flip side of that is if they extend it to 45 on somebody who's now not in jail because they're out on bail, and there isn't a speedy trial and that person should be in jail, that's the flip side.
They should have left it alone. There's other fixes for what they're trying to fix.
The other flip side is that, having that discovery can give a better informed plea discussion as well, so that when they know what the state has.
45 days is pretty quick, Andrew, as you know, that even that is tough, you know.
I've seen felony cases lag on for 6, 7, 8 months at least before they go up to county court. Well, what are we doing?
Well, is there anybody, any others in the enumerations there? Any other changes that someone would suggest?
Can we walk through the enumeration so far?
Well, so far, I think the only one that's been changed is the first one.
Oh, I was walk through the bills so far, or the resolution so far? What's been removed and changed?
Yeah, because you have the right page.
Because I have the right page numbers. So, page 86 stays as is. Page 87, the second whereas, instead of saying, which means those who have committed these crimes, or is going to say, which means those who have been charged with these crimes. Then the next two whereases on 87 are deleted. All of the whereases on page 88 are deleted. All of the whereases on page 89 are deleted. And the first full whereas on page 90 is deleted. Then I think everything else.
92, the first period gave judges the ability to impose bail when appropriate.
Right, so page 92 then, the first point that we're asking for, we're just going to put a period at the end of when appropriate. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
And one other comment, if I may, having been a sitting judge at one time, I was not a judge that would just arbitrarily and for the sake of it issue bail or set bail, because there's a lot of problems with that, to include clogging up our jail for unnecessary people taking up space. But the other thing is the Office of Judicial Conduct does address those that, and there are some, like any other profession, those are problematic. Judicial Conduct does address those judges that are a little too zealous with their bail setting. So, I mean, has there been problems? Yes, there has been problems, but I think there's mechanisms to address those problems.
I mean, bail's not supposed to be punitive, it's designed to get people to appear.
Correct. And, sometimes you might set a low bail because somebody was a danger to themselves or a member of the family or something like that, and you kind of sober up. That type of thing.
So I think that gets at something that Representative Stanel brought up too, which is this legislation is giving judges less discretion, they're less able to use their own judgment, which is what their judges do.
And the judges are the ones with the face-to-face with that individual, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, or whatever the case is, and making that evaluation.
Anybody suggest any other changes?
And we're also going to replace supervisors with representatives.
Can I make a motion that we go forward with it as written, as corrected?
amended.
That's correct. Well, we need a motion to amend.
All right, I'll make a motion to amend.
Second?
Any more further discussion? Okay, this is not my money, so we can go voice vote. Voice vote, all in favor of amending?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment passed. Okay, now a motion to vote on resolution number 49 as amended.
I'll make a motion that we vote on resolution 49 as amended.
Second?
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. I think we gotta,
I'm sorry.
can that be voice or no? I don't know.
You
Yeah.
can, any member can ask for a roll call vote. If
You want
you'd
a
like a
roll
roll call vote, then
Sure.
Okay, we can do that.
Frazier?
Aye.
Farwell?
aye.
Brockway?
Aye.
Stammel?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Overecker? Bliss?
Aye.
Marietta? McCarty?
Aye.
Wilbur?
Aye.
Oliver?
No.
Martini? Lappin?
No.
Lucille?
No.
4,659 ayes, 1,035 noes, 534 absent. Amended resolution 49 is passed. Thank you. We have another one. 55.
Oh, yes. We
First,
wouldn't
we need a
want to go
second
on.
on 55.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
We've discussed this pretty thoroughly. I would like to table this, which, as we've learned during that discussion, gives us time. We can bring it back in February or at the latest in March, which will give us, I feel, an adequate amount of time to let the people who are collecting the tax, to solicit more input from them and address their major concerns.
Maybe we should reach out to DMCOC, get their thoughts on it. It's also become clear since then. Representative Kennedy presented this to the Hartwick Town Board, and they definitely want to have a chance to weigh in about increasing it at all versus 5 versus 6. The motion that came out of IGA said up to 6%. That was to appease some of my concerns. And then it got lost in the translation, which is completely understandable. And that's why I think that we should really have things coming out of committee in a more definitive way. And I totally advocate doing more research about whether 5 or 6 would be more appropriate, and and trying to get any data that we can in terms of whether it could actually have an effect on sales tax, like the person who spoke at Privilege of the Floor said.
I think it's unlikely to have an effect on sales tax. I think the biggest concern that was transmitted to me is they thought that they were going to have to be paying on current bookings. So if we pass this today, then everything that they booked, which many of them have booked for the entire summer already, would then have to come out of their own pocket to pay that extra 2%, which is not the case. It wouldn't take effect until the state legislature passed it, and any new bookings from then on. And most of the people I talked to, once they heard that, they didn't, that satisfied their concern. That was just and it all started from a post on Facebook, from someone who didn't know the information. Posted inaccurately that they were going to have to go back and start charging these people who booked last summer, or in some cases with the theater induction 4 or 5 years ago, and that they were going to end up having to come out of their own pocket with that extra 2%. And the other concern that some mentioned was that, 2% is being dedicated to the highways, as one of the people suggested that, they weren't aware of that either.
But the resolution doesn't say that. It just says for tourism-related things.
Yeah, the resolution doesn't state that. So the only downside, I'm fine with tabling it, but the downside is, as Representative Salko said today, getting them as soon as possible increases the likelihood that it'll be appropriately addressed there. Oneida County just a few weeks ago, it was approved and signed by the governor for a 3% increase.
Do you know what their total is?
I believe it was 2 prior, so 2 to 5.
5.
I believe. Yes. Did you have?
Just a point, these people coming in here and staying in temporary housing for a week are not paying any sales tax. So 1 or 2%, you know, we're talking maybe 40 to 60 bucks total that these people, you know, if we take a $2,500 average stay for a week, you're talking 50.
Sales tax on that, it was sales tax. They're spending that extra $20 to $50 or $100 there, so they wouldn't be purchasing souvenirs or whatever.
But I don't think that's going to make any effect. And I really think that these people coming to the area, they're surprised that things are as cheap as they are.
I stayed, I think I mentioned this earlier, in December, I had to go to San Diego, and when I saw my add-ons, it was well over 30% onto the rack rate.
And New York too.
Yeah, in New York City as well.
I went to Vegas in November, and there was this tax, that tax, resort fee, you name it.
And so we can't lose sight of why we're doing this. You know, we have a massive road network and ever escalating costs to maintain said road network. A majority of our roads are in dire need of repair, as evidenced by our Cornell local road study. It's clear that our current revenue streams aren't adequate to pay for it. And it's clear that we don't have the private sector, or the kind of local regulations in place to require, private companies to pay for infrastructure upgrades. So the question is, the money has to come from somewhere. And I feel that people's willingness to pay, who are going to shell out $1,000, $2,000, $900 or so, they'd be much more willing to pay. They'd be willing to pay the $40 or $50 fee without batting an eye. I mean, for just an anecdotal reference, I had when my wedding occurred in 2017, the Clarion was charging $385 a night, and the Holiday Inn was charging almost $200. So, I mean, I think that a 6% tax is fair, and especially if it goes to maintaining the roads that people use to access the cruise and venues that they so cherish.
Ed hasn't spoken.
So I believe going forward, there's 2 things that we need to make more clear. One is where the money's going, and 2 is the implementation date.
Yep.
All right? I would be in favor of pass it now, implement it January 1, 2021.
They start renting the ballparks September 1st.
So, but if we passed it and got it, and say we're implementing this January 1, they would know that. Give them the time. I don't want our local economy or our local businessmen, people, wrongly, charged. But I don't think that I ever really looked. I mean, I've been to San Diego, Charleston, Virginia, all this year, staying where I look at it because I want to compare it. But I've made that acceptance and I'm paying whatever that tax is, whatever that bed tax is, when I'm going somewhere. Yeah. But the only reason I've even looked at them is to compare the ones Otsego County, what's it cost me in San Diego last year, Charleston this year, and we're way below everybody else. So no doubt about it.
So I just want to say that during this discussion that I've had with different constituents, it's also been brought to my attention that the collection of the occupancy tax on the side of the county is not the most user-friendly process. So I feel that in our due diligence, we should at least have a kind of a discussion with the treasurer's office and see what does that process look like from a user's end, which I've had a couple different people tell me it's not easy. And then there's part 2 of this is that it's something that we've discussed many times, is the number of people who may be doing short-term rentals and are not submitting the tax. And I got the information from all the rooms dynamic from the DMCOC They provided it to the treasurer's office, but it only provided geolocations, not street addresses. So that was kind of an impediment to like just doing this big rollout and finding out who's actually collecting and doing a checklist to see, are we getting them all? So there's still some out there that I'm sure that we are not getting. So from our side, I feel that we should make sure that that process is a little more easy to understand, or, you know, a little more user-friendly. Two, that we should make sure that if within whatever lies within our power to do to capture those other ones that may not be reporting. And then three, just to really make sure that we are listening to the people and addressing their fears with regards to implementation and with regards to actually how much it might be per stay. So.
And I guess to that point, it came up a few years ago about trying to increase enforcement so that it's fair. And there are some rules in the current bed tax law that you all passed that have to do with confidentiality of information. So that, I would suggest, would be something that you would want to look at again. And we can, because there was a great deal when the law was first passed about that issue. And I think some of the unintended consequences of that are maybe showing up now, and that might be something you'd want to revisit.
Those things both apply, the difficulty in implementing, or not, collecting the tax, and your concerns are, they're evident regardless of whether it's 4% or 2% or 1% or 20%.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a distant issue, we should address those.
I know, but it seemed like an appropriate time to discuss it.
Absolutely is.
Since I was here.
But it wouldn't necessarily affect this particular resolution.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing out there that can make that deadline. They do want to do it.
One more comment. I talked, knowing that this was going to come up for discussion, I needed some information. I talked with two of the largest booking agents for the ballparks, Cooperstown Stay and another Cooperstown one. And neither of those people felt that they would hurt business at all. That these people, you know, accept whatever we offer, but they weren't upset with it.
And then just as one more data, sorry, it's my turn. As one more data point, Onondaga County is asking the state to raise their bed tax from 5 to 7%.
5 to 7. Keith?
Yeah, you know, for about a year there, I've been trying to talk about getting a highway fund set up. We have 90 bridges in this county, and every one of them, there's probably not one that's going to be under $1 million. We have pretty much 500 miles of road that are crumbling up. And we ask people to come here, and our roads are crap. The bridges, we don't know. The bridge over Pyrestown on 59, I think, was estimated at almost $2 million. We have bridges over I-88, if we ever have to replace, are going to be $5 million or more. And to designate this for highways, which I think it should be in this, so people know where the money's going, it's only going to generate $1 million. That's just a hole in a big bucket, you know. And these people come here and they pay a lot of money. I know across the road over here, the Hall of Fame weekend, he gets $5 grand for the weekend. You know, and
Jesus coming this year.
Yeah, I mean, to put that burden on the taxpayers to come up with millions of dollars, and those same people complaining about this tax, if we don't collect it, they're going to pay it, because we still got to have the money to fix the roads. So I say put it in the resolution that what we're going to use the money for is the bed tax going towards highways, like I was told that it was supposed to be going for.
The increase, the 2% increase.
Right. And the same thing is, we don't know if the state's going to approve this. And if they do, it's still going to be a year. And I don't know when they send out their quotes for people to stay, do they include the tax? Yes. Or do they say so much?
No, it's right on the contracts. X number of dollars for the week, your bed tax is on there. The commission is taken out by the people who do the booking.
And
it's
the other
paid up
thing,
front. And it's not difficult to pay the tax to the county. You go on the website, there's a form you fill out, bang, every quarter you send the money in.
And to the point about the people renting places and not collecting the money, legally, they can't rent it without having a fire inspected, correct?
In many cases.
And so they're doing it illegal anyway, and chances are we're not gonna get that money to start with. So unless they go, and if they go through the codes lets us know that they're renting it, so we got a track of it, so.
Back to what Ellen was saying, though, I believe that the treasurer is not allowed to talk to the code office. Confidentially.
I'd have to go back and look at, it is really restrictive and an unusual way.
We can't talk to each other.
They had, yeah, but I don't want to quote from it because it's been a while since I've looked at it.
So, we have a motion to amend, to...
Table.
Table, oh, good. Oh, you're right.
And well,
So here's the option, we can table, we could amend and then vote. And the suggestion to amend would be just to add that the
designation of it.
The designation of the increase, the 2% increase would be dedicated to highway.
And also get time to get some word out.
Yeah. Okay, but we can get a word out. Yeah. Regardless.
So the only thing about the designation, so the next thing in the process is that this resolution gets sent to the state. So I just am concerned about, and perhaps you want this, but if we put in there and say, and all of this increase is going to go to the county highway fund, and then the state passes that, which I'd have to check and see if they even can, but if they do, then you've given that over to the state. So you could pass a separate resolution for that as only, saying, and any revenue that we're getting in from the bed tax, we're going to put towards the budget. So there's a few things here I think that we need to think about.
So your suggestion is to do 2 resolutions?
Yes. And I would want to go over this with the treasurer just to make sure that, to make sure what we need to do legislatively so that that's a county budgetary requirement, I guess, because that's what I'm hearing you want. You want this going to the highway. A lockbox, there you go.
Michelle.
Except that, I mean, I think that we might have be able to make a better case with the state if we say, if we can tie it directly to increasing tourism or making the people who are staying here using it, tie it to what they're using in terms of our county's resources and why we need to collect that. And one of the, I hope everybody understands how I would love to find as much funding sources for the highway as possible, but I also think that we might also want to consider if there was any portion of that we could put towards increasing cell service, because that is actually a real deterrent for tourists to come here. People are coming, and then they find out that once they get outside of Cooperstown and Oneonta, there's no cell service, that deters them from coming again for repeat visits. And that's something we've heard from our Cassandra at DMCOC. So maybe we just want to be, a separate resolution is fine. I'm just saying when we make the case to the state, we might want to think about also including that.
My understanding from Senator Seward and Senator Sullivan is that in the recent past anyway, which is all recent, that every request for an increase in sales tax has been approved, regardless of the percentage. Or, I'm sorry, bed tax. They haven't heard that they have.
Okay. There was one year they did not approve a number of things. They did not approve our request for an increase in mortgage tax.
Mortgage tax.
To bring us up, but not bed tax. Yeah. So you could put in the whereases, so we say to help pay for tourism-related expenses that the county incurs, like that's in there already. You could add to that if you want to. You could leave that as is. You
We
could
could just
take
put
it
it
back
in
to
as, for
committee.
example, highways and
Highways
and
infrastructure.
You just put in a capital fund for infrastructure projects. that
Public
covers
safety.
bases. You know? I think there's ample evidence in the literature, learning and otherwise, to suggest that impact fees or special assessments, are integral to funding.
infrastructure, which is they're heavily using.
Yeah, so, and I feel like we're not penalizing our constituents, our taxpayers, charging people largely from out of their income, and I think this is a relatively equitable idea.
So that might be where we would amend.
Yeah, you could.
So let's go, well, first we have to act on the
Table.
or you can either withdraw, or do we have to actually?
No, just, we didn't want to withdraw because of the public hearing already having been
No,
done.
you could withdraw your motion to table.
Oh, no, I still want to table it. I really would rather not have it go through today, just so that I can.
Ready, we already had a second, so we're ready to vote. So then let's do it. You can do a voice vote, I think, unless it becomes too hard to tell who's saying yes or no. Yeah. So a motion to table is all in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Just two?
Two. Any? So the motion to table is approved. Thanks, that was a long discussion, but it was a good one though. So we have no other resolutions pulled, correct? Okay, any other old business? So committees, I spent a lot of time putting together this puzzle. A little complicated, but standing committees for the committees system for appointments for 2020. Public Works, Oberacker, McCarty, Frazier, Farwell, Wilbur. IGA, Kennedy, Oberacker, Marietta, Farwell, Martini. Human Services, Martini, Frazier, Bazille, Brockway, Oliver. Public Safety, Wilbur, Farwell, Oberacker, Frazier, Stammel. Health and Ed, Stammel, Lappin, Marietta, Brockway, Bazille. Solid Waste, McCarty, Lappin, Farwell, Kennedy, Brockway. Admin, Kennedy, Oberacker, Marietta, McCarty, Frazier, Martini. Negotiations, Frazier, McCarty, Bazille. Performance review and goal setting, Farwell, Marietta, Wilbur, Oliver, Stammel. Technology and strategic planning, Marietta, Lappin, Oberacker, Oliver, Brockway. You could get together and work on your committee dates, and I have written copies.
Just so you have copies of it?
Yes, written copy here. But I have to read them.
I just wanted to say one thing. So if anyone would like to, I know this year we always, every 2 years, have new board members. If any of you would like to meet with me, I could go over some general things about the county that you might be facing, or we could have a general meeting after the February meeting, and any board member can come. So I think if the three of you want to let me know, I've spoken to Clark, but there are other things we could go over, in particular, a lot of issues you're going to be facing have to do with personnel. So there are a lot of rules about that. But, let me know. I bring in our personnel officer, and she'd be happy to go over some of that with you, and I could go over some other issues.
I guess we do have extras.
Looks like you're gonna stuck with me on select night.
Wow, man.
Actually,
What date aren't you available?
So,
well, actually, my schedule's pretty good.
say that it can actually.
Excuse me?
Sunday looks pretty,
Oh, yes.
I actually have to go get things.
Don't forget to notify Carol when your meeting's going to be. We are adjourned.
How about